Okay, everybody, let's set up the TS60 for success on a crosscut. It's pretty simple. You take the TS60 out, and the first thing you want to do is you want to adjust these cams here to knock out the lateral tolerance on the rail in this rib. So what I like to do is take it, tighten it all the way, and back it off ever so slightly so it slides smooth and no lateral tolerance or no play. The next thing I'd like to do is show you how to set depth. It's pretty simple. I like to zero it out. So I take the piece of material I'm cutting, I put the rail on it, I bring it down here, and what I do is I take the depth stop and move it up, and then I do a couple of notches more this way. So now I'm going to cut all the way through. The final step to do this is there's a little window here, and I'm going to push it down to block the dust. Now, if you notice something throughout the whole process of setting this up, I do not have the saw plugged in. So when you're doing your adjustments, make sure your saw is unplugged. Okay, so now we got to add the dust extraction. I have it plugged in, and I'm going to put the dust extraction connection here and lock it on, and then put it onto the TS60. So it's pretty easy. What I like to do is take that cord and hose, wrap it up around my arm, and I like to start it at full speed, drop it down, go forward, and bring it up full speed. So let's take a look at the quality of cut. And it is absolutely 100% splinter free, even on this very thin veneer. So one other thing I really want to point out, and it's quite a distinction on the TS60 and every single Festool track saw. When you first initially get your rail and your saw, you cut the splinter guard. So everywhere I lay that splinter guard for that splinter-free cut on that witness mark, whether it's 0 or anywhere between -1 and 47 degrees, it's going to cut right on that line. So this is the offcut, and I believe we saw how rough it was. And you saw this part of the crosscut that was held down by the splinter guard. But what if you also want your offcut to be splinter free? So right here on the saw, I have unplugged it. I take that window that blocks the dust, I move it up, and I take this. This is an outside splinter guard, okay, and I slip it on here, and there's a knob that comes with them. And I do the exact same thing when I set this up on the rail here. I take it and I push it down, and that I'm going to cut that initially, and that will create a perfect splinter-free cut on the outside. So I plugged it in, and let's make the cut. And there you go, absolutely perfectly splinter free. So what else you do with the TS60? You rip. So I'm going to show you my basic setup for ripping and processing plywood. It's the same thing as cross cutting. You set your depth, okay, and the way I like to do this time, because I'm not zeroing out the blade, is I look at this scale. So where it says FS, that's the thickness of my material. The bottom cursor incorporates the 5 millimeters of the guide rail. So what I'll do is I'll set this at 20 millimeter for 3/4, but there's also a secondary scale in imperial. Because this is a different rail, I want to knock out the lateral tolerance for these two cams and check to see about the play. The next thing I did on here is, you don't necessarily have to do this, but in the beginning, I recommend that you clamp it from both ends. And I chose a distance to rip off this piece of plywood to straight line rip it. I checked with my blade here, so the blade is captured in the wood. That way there I maximize dust extraction, and I will set my window down. we're ready to cut. So one of the things I wanted to point out when I'm either ripping plywood or hardwood, I always bring my blade down first to see where it's going to start. I always want to start the blade before the wood. I bring it up to speed, I bring it down, and I make the cut. Okay, so one of the great things about the TS60 and all the Festool track saws, no matter if I cut at 90 or anywhere between 0 and 47, remember, it cuts on the same line. So what I did is I've already ripped this at 90. I'm gonna rip it at 45. So what I'm gonna do is I take these two knobs here, I release them, I take it, there's a positive stop at 45, and I lock it in. And it's that simple. So one of the things you have to be certain of when you are ripping at a 45, make sure your hand is on the base of the saw. That way there it doesn't tilt. And it's really the same process. Is you come back here, you check your depth, and you make your cut. Hey, as I remove the clamp and we look at the quality of cut, I'm going to move this over and you can see whether we cut exactly at 90 or exactly at 45. There's no deviance of blade, and you can see it right here. It's absolutely spot on. So all those same accessories that you have used over the years with your guide rails work with the TS60, including, to gain those perfect repeatable cuts, the FS parallel guides, the perfect indexing system for your guide rail and your TS60. As you can see, the TS60 is the saw for all your needs, from cross-cutting to beveling to ripping. Hey, thanks for watching.